Hey guys, it's the Full Check podcast on August 19th, 2021. We are continuing the 32 and 32, and today we have the team that I've been waiting to go all in on, the Buffalo Sabres. Again, nothing hockey related, just my Orioles stuff, which the Orioles are probably about as bad as the Sabres right now. I don't own any Sabres stuff, and I don't know anybody who would unless you're a hardcore Sabres fan, but let's get into it. So, oh, I don't know where to start with Buffalo. I really, really don't know where to start. So we're going to start with the last 3 years like we do with every other, the last four teams. So in 2018, 2019, they went 33, 39, and 10 for 76 points. They had 226 goals for, 271 against. Sorry, there's a lot of traffic outside. So if you hear cars outside, that's why. For a minus 45 goal differential. And I am pretty sure that was the year where the Sabres had started out really hot. And by December, by November, we're in first place of the division. And I think a lot of people thought that maybe Buffalo had turned the corner. And they fell apart down the stretch. But, it was something that Buffalo fans and the team in general thought it was maybe something they could build on. So we get to 2019, 2020, 30, 31, and 8 for 68 points, 195 goals for, and 217 against for a minus 22 differential. The bubble year. And actually, if we look, I'm gonna try to pull up the standings for that year because obviously that was an interesting year for the bubble. If we go to 2019, 2020, Buffalo they were literally 3 points out of a playoff spot. So they could have been Montreal and made the playoffs when they probably shouldn't have. But again, the last 2 years, these are steps. They are taking steps to make the playoffs. And then 2020, 2021 hits, and I forgot a 0 in 2020 because that's how great 2020 went. 2020 hits, and they go 15, 34, and 7 for 37 points, 138 goals for, 199 against, for a goal differential of minus 61. And this is the year where everything just kind of fell apart. I mean, 18 straight losses. They were winless in 18 straight games. They went 0, 15, and 3. That's embarrassing on itself. And here's the biggest thing with Buffalo. Their special teams. Their power play percentage was 12th in the league at 21%, but their penalty kill was 77.7%. That was good for 26th in the league. So they could score power play goals. They just couldn't keep other teams from scoring power play goals. I'll get into this season in a minute, but team leaders, Sam Reinhart, who is no longer with the team, he was traded. He had 25 goals. Victor Olofsson led with 19 assists. Sam Reinhart had 40 points, so there's Reinhart again. Jake McCabe was a +2. So, Arizona and I both – so we're going from Boston, who I'm pretty sure, if I look back at it, Patrice Bergeron was a +27 last year, and Jake McCabe is the highest plus-minus on the Buffalo Sabres at +2. That gives you an indication of how bad they were. Linus Ullmark had 9 wins. He led the team with 9 wins. He had a .917 save percentage and a .263 goals against average, which both led the team. And then Carter Hutton led the team in losses with 10. So Carter Hutton, not a very good goalie. However, and for those who listen to the radio show, I've had people on. We've talked about the Sabres. Carter Hutton is a stopgap goalie, but he's not a guy that should start. And he went 1 in 10. He went 1 in 10. And I'm pretty sure Ullmark had to take a leave and then got hurt at one point. But Carter Hutton, that was probably the worst goaltending performance that you could have seen. And so I'll get to all the Buffalo stuff in a sec, all the my issues with Buffalo in a second. But if we go to transactions, they acquired Craig Anderson. Aaron Dell and Craig Anderson both signed a contract for a year and $750,000 each. Anderson was 2-1 with a 213 goals against average and a 915 save percentage in 4 games with the Washington Capitals. He was 1-1 in the playoffs with 1 start. Should not have been pulled, but we'll get to that when we get to Washington. Aaron Dell was 1-5 with a 414 goals against and an 857 save percentage in 7 games with the Devils. They also acquired Will Butcher and a 5th-round pick in the 2022 draft from the Devils in exchange for future considerations. 11 points, 1 goal, 10 assists in 23 games for the Devils this season. He was selected by Colorado in the 5th round. He has 106 points career, 14 goals, 92 assists in 238 regular season games, and 1 goal, 3 assists in the playoffs. So, 2 goalies. Very interesting signings for the Buffalo Sabres, but they're good signings. And they're good for the fact that Buffalo's not going to win this year. Buffalo's not even going to be close to winning. And if you have goalies in the farm system, this is the time where you sign Craig Anderson and Aaron Dell to let those goalies develop into something that you want to see in the future. And for $750,000 for both goalies, that's not bad at all. I don't think that was really a big problem. And they signed, their next signing is Ethan Prow to a 1-year contract for $750,000 as well. He had 20 points, 4 goals, 16 assists last season with EHC München in Germany. He appeared in 215 AHL games with Wilkes-Barre and Scranton and Springfield, tallying 116 points. So he was on the St. Cloud University team in 2015-2016 that won an NCHC championship. And he also was a top 10 finalist for the Hobie Baker Award. I want to go back to the Will Butcher signing real quick, or trade. I like Will Butcher. I think he's a good defenseman. I think he needs to be on a team where he's surrounded by good defensemen, and I don't think that's Buffalo. The Sabres also signed forward John Hayden to a 1-year deal, also $750,000. He had 5 points, 2 goals, 3 assists with Arizona last year. He's got 31 points in 185 games from 13 goals and 18 assists with Chicago, New Jersey, and Arizona. Look, again, another good signing. They're not signing a bunch of players to gigantic contracts. They signed Vinny Hinostroza to a 1-year contract for $1.05 million. 12 points, 4 goals, and 8 assists in 17 games after being acquired from Florida. He has 112 points in his career, 38 and 74 in 272 NHL career games. In 2018, his last productive season, he had 16 goals, 23 assists, and 39 points in 72 games with Arizona. $1 million, you could say that's a lot, but I mean, it's only a 1-year contract, and if he proves himself, he'll probably get Buffalo will probably be stupid like they always are, and they will sign him to a big old contract. They re-signed Rasmus Asplund to a 2-year contract worth $825,000 a year. He had 10 points last year, 6 goals, 4 assists. He's 23 years old, so again, another good signing, good young player, it looks like. They signed Casey Fitzgerald to a 2-year contract worth $750,000. He's 24 years old. This is a re-sign. He had 11 good points, 2 goals, 9 assists in 22 games with Rochester in his second pro season. So Buffalo is making moves that aren't hurting them, I think, and I think that they probably know that they're not going to do anything this year. Their departures, however, they lost JSD to Montreal, Stephen Fogarty to Boston, Carter Hutton to Arizona, which is not a big loss, Matt Irwin to Washington, Jake McCabe to Chicago, and Linus Ullmark to the Boston Bruins. That might hurt a little more. Rival and Ullmark could probably shine in Boston. Big trade for them though. They traded Rasmus Ristolainen to the Philly Flyers for Robert Hagg, and I think Robert Hagg might be. He's not even on the cap friendly, so I don't know. Oh yeah, here he is. $1.6 million. He's 26 years old. You got rid of the cap for Ristolainen, which is good. You got the number 14 pick and a 2023 second round pick. So if we look at their cap space right now, they have 28.6 million cap. Their dead cap space, or their deadline cap space, they had 136 mil. They're still paying, obviously, they're paying Jack Eichel. He's getting $10 million, and he's on IR. They bought out Cody Hodgson. He's making $791,000 in the next 2 years, so not bad. So Buffalo has a lot of cap space, so they could do stuff. The biggest problem here, the two contracts, Jeff Skinner and Kyle Okposo. Jeff Skinner is probably the worst signing that any team could have ever done. They signed him for his 1 year in Buffalo and his one good year in Carolina. He's making $9 million for the next 6 years. I think if Buffalo could go back and redo that trade, they would. He's 29 years old. He's taking up 11% of the cap because Eichel is out, so he's the most in cap space right now. Kyle Okposo's 33. He's making $6 million for the next 2 years. Olofsson is a restricted free agent next year. Cody Eakin's making 2.2 until next year. Jurgensen's making 2.2 for the next 2 years. Anders Bjork's making 1.6. Tage Thompson, Vinny Hinostroza. So they've got some stuff in cap space. Colin Miller. And they've got a young team too. Their defense is pretty young. Rasmus Ristolainen is a restricted free agent next year after this season. After this season. So what's wrong with the Buffalo Sabres? You can start with their goaltending. They haven't had a solid goalie since Ryan Miller. You can start with Rasmus Ristolainen maybe being a bust. And, I don't like to throw the word bust around too much. However, if people are going to call Jack Hughes a bust, and Jack Hughes had a better season this year, then Rasmus Dahlin is definitely a bust. Rasmus Ristolainen, or not Rasmus, Dahlin is not performing to what they had drafted him to do. Let's look at his stats. Rasmus Dahlin stats. Let's see here. Now, this year in 56 games, he had 5 goals, 18 assists for 23 points. He was a minus 36. He did have 11 power play points, so that is good. In 3 years with Buffalo, he's got 18 goals, 89 assists for 107 points. He's a career minus 56. So he's really regressed. I mean, he had a career high in assists last year in 36, but I mean, he's regressed since they drafted him. But I also haven't seen and you can honestly say that maybe, hey, it's Buffalo. They are not a good team. Buffalo struggles a lot, and it's not all on Rasmus Dahlin. Yeah, it's not all on Dahlin. But you're a number 1 pick. You should be performing better than what you are. And 5 goals and 18 assists is not going to get it done. And a minus 35 around there, that's bad. And like I said, you're a number 1 pick. You're supposed to be performing better than you should be performing better than that. Now, granted, again, like I said, he plays for the Sabres, so a lot of it probably has to do with his teammates and how good his teammates are. But I think that maybe Rasmus Dahlin may have not been the right choice. Let's look at the 2018 draft. I think that was his draft year. Because as a rookie, he was very good. But he's, like I said, he's regressed. He did have a career high in assists last year, but he really hasn't done anything that noteworthy. So if we look here, we had Darlene Svechnikov was taken by the Hurricanes. He's turning into a pretty good goalie or player. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, I think he's going to be pretty good. He's starting to develop. Brady Tkachuk, you could have drafted Brady Tkachuk. Philip Zadina, you could have had Quinn Hughes, Adam Boqvist. Boqvist was Darlene's teammate on the national team, I'm pretty sure. We have a lot of these guys maybe have not made it. Keandre Miller, even probably not worth a number one pick though. Let's see here. Just looking at all these guys that Alexiev isn't a number one pick, but I mean, just looking at the guys that are performing right now, like Brady Tkachuk, Kotkaniemi, Svechnikov, Philip Zadina, even Quinn Hughes. And in all honesty, I would have taken Quinn Hughes over Rasmus Dahlin. But the thing is, would his career have panned out in Buffalo like it is in Vancouver? So if we look at Quinn Hughes' stats compared to Rasmus Dahlin, Quinn Hughes had 3 goals, 38 assists, 41 points. He was on minus 21 or minus 24, but he's also on the Canucks. His basically rookie year, he had 8 goals, 45 assists, 53 points. He was a minus 10 that year. And I think that that's obviously going to get better if the Canucks get better. If we look at Brady Tkachuk, I can't spell Brady Tkachuk's name because it is a weird name. He's kind of a prick like his dad. He had 17 goals, 19 assists, and 36 points in 56 games and a minus 17. He regressed a little bit last year, but that was in 56 games. In 71 games in 2018, he had 22 goals, 23 assists for 45 points and a minus 10. Last year, the previous year, he had 71 games played, 21 goals, 23 assists, and 44 points for a minus 14. Now, all the teams that I mentioned are pretty bad right now, and they're rebuilding. But Ottawa and Vancouver have a better rebuild strategy than the Buffalo Sabres. And that's where the rebuild, and then you talk about the word rebuild. I got to look at the draft because I don't remember what the draft was. Was it the 2016 NHL draft? I want to say it was 2016. Was it? Nope. So it was the 2015 NHL draft. And Buffalo, I actually want to look at the 2014 NHL draft too because Buffalo really, they weren't a great hockey team, but they were a good hockey team. Okay, so here we go. 2014, they draft Sam Reinhart. 2015, they draft Jack Eichel. But I think a lot of this started in 2014. They started trading away assets to get first round picks. They really, really tried to tank for Connor McDavid, and it didn't work. And I don't want to say we're stuck with Jack Eichel, but they were stuck with Jack Eichel. And Jack Eichel has not panned out, I think, the way that the Sabres have envisioned him panning out for this team. And that's not all on him. A lot of that's on the organization and the ownership, and we'll get to them in a second. But Jack Eichel hasn't really panned out the way that they had hoped. They've already lost their 2014 first-round pick. Sam Reinhart traded to Florida, who then signed a 3-year contract with them. Jack Eichel is probably on his way out. But they started this rebuild. If we look at standings, let's look at the 2013 NHL standings. I want to see the last time that they made the playoffs, I want to say it was 2011. But if we look at the 2012, yep. So they really started this rebuild in 2011. I think that they finished 9th in the Eastern Conference. In 2011, they went 39, 32, and 11 for 89 points. They were 3 points out of the final playoff spot. And so, looking at their next few seasons, Buffalo was really gearing up, I feel like, for the Connor McDavid draft, the Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel draft. I think 2014, Aaron Ekblad was the best player in the draft. And then you go to 2015, and I've talked about it on the show. You're stuck with Jack Eichel. And I don't know. I don't think Jack Eichel's a bad player, but I don't think he's this elite player that everybody is building him up to be. Now Buffalo is handling his injuries situation terribly, and Buffalo. I'm going to say it. Buffalo's a piece of crap organization for what they're doing with Jack Eichel. But you have guys like Mitch Marner. You have guys like Zach Werenski. You have guys like Mikko Rantanen, Matthew Barzal, Thomas Chabot, Brock Besser, Travis Konechny. I mean, these guys who are performing a lot better, I think, in my opinion, than Jack Eichel. And I'm sure someone will comment and say my opinion's wrong, which is fine. But Mitch Marner, except in the playoffs, Marner disappears in the playoffs, and who knows why? Him, Matthews, Marner, they all disappear. And then you look at the 2016 draft. Buffalo drafted. Let's see, who did Buffalo draft? Buffalo drafted Alex Nylander, who I'm pretty sure is with Chicago right now. Is he with Chicago? Yep, he is with Chicago. So again, another first round draft pick that Buffalo traded away. They could have had Matthew Tkachuk. They could have had Clayton Keller. They couldn't have Patrick Laine or Austin Matthews. Oh, no. They couldn't have Tkachuk or Keller. Sergachev, who is playing very well with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tyson Jost, Jake Bean. All these guys that they passed on. And again, Nylander, and that's not to say Nylander isn't a bad player, but I feel like Buffalo misses on a lot of these picks. I think in 2015 they could have had Ilya Samsonov later. And that's the other issue with the Sabres. They have no goaltending. They haven't had a goalie since Ryan Miller. And I think one of the biggest problems right now is there is no Dominik Hasek just sitting on a bench somewhere. There's no Hasek sitting anywhere on anybody. They got a Hall of Fame goalie from the Chicago Blackhawks. They've built in the last 30 years, they have built one goalie from their farm system. That was Ryan Miller. And I'm almost positive Ryan Miller was drafted by the Buffalo Sabres. But they haven't built a goalie except for Ryan Miller. Ryan Miller, yep, he was drafted 138th by the Sabres. So, yeah, they haven't built a goalie. They haven't had a goalie come up from their farm system and become a really good goalie, a great goalie like a Ryan Miller, who that was the only goalie in the last 30 years that they've taken up and built. Dominik Hasek was good before he got to Buffalo. The Blackhawks just picked Eddie Belfour over Dominik Hasek. And there's no goalies like that sitting around right now. And I think that goaltending is probably the biggest problem for the Buffalo Sabres aside from ownership. And that's the other issue with Buffalo's ownership. The Pagulas are the worst owners that I've ever seen in hockey. And Terry Pagula, he's off dancing with the Bills, making them into a better team, doing all the hiring. That leaves Kim Pagula to deal with the Buffalo Sabres, and she does not know what she's doing. And it's evident she doesn't know what she's doing. I want to know when the Pagulas bought the Buffalo Sabres, because if it was around the Connor McDavid or the Connor McDavid draft, then that explains a lot. Let's see here. The Pagulas, let's see, they bought, I want to see when they bought the Sabres. I don't know if it's going to say, let's see. Yep. Okay, so 2011, they purchased the Buffalo Sabres. That was the last time the Buffalo Sabres were even close to the playoffs. I think that's the last time they made the playoffs was 2011. There's a pattern here, and it's the Pagulas. I don't even care how you pronounce their name. They're the problem. Kim Pagula is destroying this team. They wanted Connor McDavid so bad, and then they lost out on Connor McDavid. Jack Eichel's not a bad player, but he is not Connor McDavid. And again, would Connor McDavid have turned this team around? Maybe, maybe not. He's turned Edmonton around to be a first-round choker every year. So there's that. But they have destroyed this team. And I think of when Aaron Rodgers was talking about how players are let go and traded everybody, like Packers gave him no insight, but not from Aaron Rodgers' standpoint, but from a business standpoint, getting rid of players, trading away players because you're starting this rebuild, even though your team is still competitive. Yes, rebuilding, trading away players for draft picks is a good idea when they're older and you don't think Ryan Miller was still good. Ryan Miller, you traded him to, I think, yeah, they traded him to St. Louis for Halak. And I don't think Halak wanted to play there. I think that's how it went. Don't quote me on that. But they traded Ryan Miller. They've traded so many players to do this rebuild, and they're right back where they started. They're back into another rebuild because they don't know what they're doing. The amount of GMs they fired, the amount of coaches they fired. But the one move that I will give them credit for is the Taylor Hall trade. And I know there were a lot of Sabre fans who were upset about the Taylor Hall trade. What were you going to get for Taylor Hall other than Anders Bjork, who's a third-round winger or a third-line winger, and maybe a fourth or fifth-round pick? I don't know what they got for him. Taylor Hall's a cancer. Why you signed him in the first place, I don't know. He wasn't going to put you over the top. Two, like I said, he's a cancer. He's been on 4 or 5 teams in the last 4 or 5 years. He wore out his welcome in New Jersey. He wore out his welcome in Arizona and Buffalo, and he's made of glass. He gets hurt a lot. But aside from all that, like I said, Pagulas are the biggest issue for this team. They are the biggest hindrance for this team. They're not going to win unless the Pagulas sell the team. And we'll get to their draft pick in a second because we might have another Will Butcher situation on our hands. But the owners need to take their hand. Kim especially needs to take her hands out of this team. Let the GM do what he's supposed to do. Let the coach. Don't even worry about it. If you don't know the game of hockey and you're an owner, don't do anything. Just don't do anything because you're killing this team. And now like I said, they're forced with another rebuild. They're probably going to have to end up trading Jack Eichel. They can't trade Jeff Skinner. They can't even trade him and eat his contract because nobody wants him. So now the Sabres are in a tough spot. And if we go to their draft, their first pick was Owen Power out of Michigan, Isaac Rosen from Lexington. They drafted Prokhor Poltapov from CSKA2 Russia, Junior League. Alexander Kizakov from Dynamo Moscow, Russia, or Dynamo Moscow 2 from the Russian Junior League. Steven Sardarian from CSK2. I'm sure that's Cisco. Yeah. Josh Bloom from the Sayonara Spirit. Olivier Nadeau from Shawinigan from the QMJHL. Villemin Marala from Quebec in the QMJHL. William von Lofberg from Malmo Junior in Sweden. Nikita Novikov from Dynamo Moscow 2. And Tyson Kozak from Portland of the WHL. Owen Power still hasn't signed his contract with the Buffalo Sabres. He's going to return to Michigan. I'll be honest with you, I love hockey and I try to do as much research as I can. I actually don't know if this is like Major League Baseball. If you go back to school, if you can re-enter the draft. Because this might be another Will Butcher situation, or I think the other Jimmy Vesey. That's the other guy who didn't sign his contract and was traded to the Sabres, who he didn't sign with, and then he went to New York. He ended up going to New York. Will Butcher didn't sign with Colorado, ended up going to New Jersey. Is Owen Power the next guy who's going to be like, I don't want to play for this team? And I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to play for Buffalo either. No matter how much money you throw at me, I wouldn't want to play for Buffalo. But Buffalo's in a tight spot now. If Owen Power doesn't sign, I'm pretty sure he can demand a trade. So yeah, Buffalo's in a rough spot right now. I mean, I don't know how this team gets better from here other than trying to trade away talent and rebuilding the right way. Don Granato's a very good hockey coach, but the owners have to keep their hands out of the team. So I gave this team, you can't even see it, an F. You can't even see it. I gave him an F for the offseason. In terms of wins, I said, what did I say for Arizona? 15 to 25. I think Buffalo's in that same position, but I think 10 to 20 wins for the Buffalo Sabres is accurate. I don't see this team winning 20 games with the goaltending that they have in the situation with Jack Eichel. Jeff Skinner doesn't know how to put the puck in the net anymore. He doesn't even know how to play hockey anymore. Rasmus Dahlin is struggling, and Owen Power doesn't even want to play for your hockey club right now. This team might not even win more than 15 games. I think Buffalo will be in the running for the number one pick again. That's how bad this team is. And the profile, not the profile picture, but the picture for the video is the Buffalo Slug. Right now, this team, they are the embodiment of that logo, the Buffalo Slug. The good thing for Buffalo is you can't get any worse. The only way you can go from here is up, but you have to make all the right decisions. You have to trade Jack Eichel, but don't trade him to the Rangers because nobody wants the Rangers to be good. I wanted Jack Eichel in maybe Chicago because I think Jack Eichel in Chicago, maybe his attitude changes and he's playing on a winning team, and putting him on the line with Kaner and DeBrincat, put him on the wing or put DeBrincat on the wing, good team. But Buffalo's got to do something. They can't sit around. Right now, Buffalo's sitting around and twiddling their thumbs about the Jack Eichel situation, about their team in general. You've got to make a decision, and you've got to make it soon because your decision is going to affect the NHL landscape, and it's going to affect your team. You're not going to be good, and that's fine. Your rebuild did not go as planned. And honestly, I think after the last 2 years, when they went 33 and 39 and 10, and they started out hot, and last year they went 30 and 31 and missed out on the playoffs by 3 points, the Taylor Hall signing was probably a signing that, hey, he's going to put us over the top. And then you bottomed out at 15 and 34 and 15 and 3. Something's got to change, Buffalo. It's obviously the owners, but they're not going to sell. The Sabres' only hope is that the owners is that Kim doesn't touch the team at all this year. Let them lose. Let them bring up AHL guys to get experience. Because, like I said, it's going to be a 10 to 20 win team, especially in that division. And not only that, the division last year, maybe they do better if it's not the division of death, because their division was the division of death. Maybe it's a little better if they're in their own division. But even still, they won't make the playoffs if they're in their own division, because you had Tampa, Boston, Toronto, and Montreal would have finished fourth, but they probably wouldn't have made the playoffs. But again, your division, I just don't see it. I don't even think you're going to be better than the Senators. I think the Senators are gearing up to be a better hockey club this year. So, yeah, this was the Buffalo Sabres 32 and 32. We will be back Monday. I got to actually see what team is next. You'd think I'd have this alphabetically memorized, but I don't. Teams. Next on the docket is The Calgary Flames. Oh boy. Talking about a team that overreacts. So yeah, I'm John Gervasi. This is a Full Check Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at @full_check on Twitter. In next Saturday, I have a meeting with off the ice for the hockey team. And then in 2 weeks, I think 2 weeks after that is Team Media Day. So I'll be putting out some interviews from the hockey club from Division II, just so you can get to know all the players. I'll be putting them on my Twitter page, and I'm going to try to be more active on the Twitter just because now that hockey's back for Central, I have more content to give you, and I'll have more content for the NHL. So, yeah, next time, Calgary Flames. Peace.